Right, we can take a seat, please, guys. Mr. Swani, that's you. Right, so, is anyone in here who wasn't at the boot camp? So you're in for a treat. Steve Ellis, who is alumni of the university, and has had, as he told in his presentation, worked at a very high level in the food and drink industry, and he is going to talk to you today very much about how to succeed in the market, team, various bits, which will really add value to David's presentation. So again, think of questions. You don't often get access to this level of people from the industry. So think of questions, get your value here, and that'll add value to your presentation. Just to let you guys know that we will send you out the presentations, but also the film crew here, they are filming all of these, will actually be standalone videos of their own. They're going to be uploaded in a week or so to our YouTube channel, and you can relive. For you guys. Right, cool. They can't see, but that'll be enough, that's cool. So you can relive the whole thing again. So the presentation will be available, as will a film of it. So I'm going to hand you over to Steve, and we'll speak to you afterwards.
That's great. Before we start, a bit of housekeeping. Has everybody got a phone or anything that can connect to the internet? You want to get it out? A bit unusual, isn't it, for get your phone out in the middle of a presentation? So, if you've got a QR reader, it's not working. How do I move it forward? Might be that, is it? Steve, do you know how to move this forward? There we go. Perfect. Okay, so if you've got a QR reader on your phone, that should take you to the website. If not, you just need to type in the website address at the bottom. You actually don't need the HTTP start with ETC in your web browser. It is case sensitive though. Okay, it is case sensitive. Can you get on? Perfect. Yeah. So you should have, if I do it on my QR code. Oops. You should have it waiting for pull to start. Yeah? You got all that? Right. So let's have a quick quiz. So you should have now that question come up. So let's see what you think the answers are. So vote away. Oh, all right. Yeah. Everybody had a chance to vote? Who's online? You got it? Okay, so let's see what the answer is. 18 minutes. 27 hours? 3 minutes. But 18 minutes is the correct answer. So I think what we've established is that we don't know much about elephants' gestation periods from David and panda sex. Okay? The good news is, though, that the technology is working, so I can carry on. All right, so we'll come back to that and we'll use that again. So keep that browser open. Great. Okay, so a little bit of background about myself first of all. Quite unusual background actually, because I started off in big blue chip companies. Bass PLC I joined from university, big FTSE 100. Molson Coors, the world's 5th largest brewer. That in the UK had 2,500 employees, 1.3 billion turnover. I was the sales director on the board there, and then strategy director doing M&A, mergers and acquisitions. Then I moved to Two Sisters Food Group. They're the UK's largest food manufacturer. It's a private company, entrepreneur-owned, started in 1993 with £7 million turnover in 1993. It's now 3.2 billion turnover, still 100% privately owned. It's an amazing entrepreneurial story, actually. So I worked for the owner, Ranjit Singh, and I actually started when he bought Northern Foods 4 years ago. He was a £1 billion turnover, Northern Foods were £1 billion. My job was to bring those two companies together and integrate them. Last job I had, I was the managing director for the poultry division. That was about £1 billion turnover and 8,000 employees. So actually, what I've tried to do is take from two very different companies, very blue chip, very process oriented, and very entrepreneurial. What are the learnings? But the career has also been pretty broad. So rather than one functional specialism, so it hasn't been sales route all the way. Actually, I started off in IT. I moved to production, operations. I then went to sales, purchasing, logistics. Then I was MD of a business unit before getting to the board. So actually, I was marketing director for a while as well. So it's almost a very broad career that hopefully the kind of two different aspects of blue chip and entrepreneurial, and that broad sense can give you some ideas about finding a way to win. Okay, so this is the model that actually I've pulled together that learning. I've used that learning to pull together that model. And last week we talked about the market and finding a way to win. And actually, David's presentation this morning really supported the things I was talking about there. And actually, we're going to spend a lot more time on the other three boxes today. But in order, really, what do we really want to get out today is, I think, if you can answer some very simple questions about your business, and you can put that on one page, you'll be in a very strong position. And the questions are, why? Why am I in business? What's my purpose? What is it I'm going to do? How am I going to do it? And how will I know I've succeeded? How much in terms of what results am I expecting? And if you can answer those four questions, and keep it really, really simple, then actually I think you'll be in a strong position. I think sometimes strategy gets far too complicated. So people talk about vision, mission, purpose, strategies, tactics, values, core values. Why, what, how much? For me, keeps things simple and very focused. In order to do that, though, I'm going to actually use an example from my past. And I'm going to try and bring what we talk about to life through an example. And the example I'm going to use is, it was back in 2007. I was actually the purchasing and logistics director at the time. We had a channel that was a wholesaling channel, so we bought beers, wines, spirits, soft drinks, ciders, and then sold them on to 12,000 customers. It was about half of the company's turnover, so £650 million worth of turnover, and we had 700 employees. Now, the board looked at this kind of trajectory of profit and said, this channel is going out of business. 50 pubs per week are closing. It's a very competitive marketplace, and we keep on losing business. And every year they lost significant amount of profit. So this is profit in millions of pounds. So Steve, you're the purchasing logistics director. Go in and take as much cost out as you possibly can, and so we can sweat this. That was pretty much the brief. I actually went in and said, I think there's a different way, and what we'll do is we'll try and bring to life that why, what, how much through that story as we go through. So I'm going to keep on coming back to that example. So market, finding a way to win. Let's just start with a recap there again. Now, I think David's covered a lot today, and I'm really pleased that he had a very, very similar outlook. It is all about the customer. I mean, I think I talked about it's the customer who decides who wins. So unless you're creating a customer, unless you're persuading a customer to put their hand in their pocket and pay for your product, then actually it's just a very good idea. So that's absolutely the key. So always focus on the customer. But then really understand also about your competitors, the strengths of your competitors, and the strengths and weaknesses of yourself. And then through all of that, and an understanding of the market, the context of that market, you should be able to find a way to win. And then today I want you to think about how you're going to describe what that way to win is, the why. So let's look at two examples of two very successful companies who've described their way to win in their kind of purpose statement. So can you all read that rather than me read it out? Is that, you can read it? So just read those for a couple of seconds, and then I'm going to ask you to vote on which one you prefer. So which one hits you and thinks, yeah, that really does it for me? So let's go back to the phone, shall we? Okay, which purpose statement do you prefer? Interesting. Right, shall we? A few more late votes coming in. Oh, almost 50-50. Right, let's see who. Okay, so pretty much 50-50. You know, slight preference towards IKEA there. Go back to the. Let's go back to that. So, slight preference towards IKEA, Unilever. Actually, they're both quite different. So, Unilever's has a much broader purpose. It talks about, you know, they really talk about having a social purpose. It's not just about business, and they have a real drive to make sustainable economies to be able to have sustainable business. IKEA's actually is much more focused on their business model. Now, there is a real question out there today around business, the social purpose of business, but also the other side of that coin is actually the business of business is business. So there's no right answer to this, and it's your personal view in terms of where you go. I actually prefer the IKEA one because it describes very, very clearly what their business model is about. If you're in IKEA, you know you are there to design fantastic furniture that everybody can afford. The Unilever one is a much more umbrella purpose, and actually you have to look to their brands, whether that be Dove or Colgate or their other brands, what you're there to deliver. So for me, but it's up to you to decide how you want to write this. IKEA is much more focused about what the business is about, and that's why I prefer it. But it's as you can see, it's 50-50. Now they're quite grand statements. In my case, back in 2007, we didn't have anything so grand. So and I'll just come on to that. But the other question actually is when you are delivering a product, it's not just about the product you're delivering or the service you're delivering. So is it delivering the customer's needs? Is it the right quality? Is it the right value? Sometimes the experience that the customer has when they're buying that product is just as important. And if you get a really bad experience, even if you get a great product, a great value, you're not going to go back. You know, think about a great restaurant meal. The food is fantastic, but they throw the plates down at you. You know, you're not going to go back to that restaurant. And sometimes when you're in some businesses, this is as important as the product and the solution. And that was certainly the case in the example I'm going to share. David talked about really understanding customer needs and how do you get out and find that. Well, we actually went out and spent time with our customers. Well, actually, the customers that we had, the customers that we lost who had left us, and customers who had never been customers of ours. We wanted to know why. I actually went and worked behind bars in working men's clubs and pubs up and down the country. I think the highlight might have been breaking up a fight between a barmaid and a customer that the barmaid started. It was one of those times that you think you think you've seen it all, but no. And the customer told us that they wanted a very varied actually set of needs. They wanted people who were empowered, who could solve their problems and could support them, who had the skills to support their business. So almost business advice. They wanted a company who had strong brands because they wanted the promotional support of those brands. They wanted a very broad portfolio. So I don't want to just buy beers from you, Steve. I also want to get everything else on one delivery. I'm too busy with my business to keep on opening the door to 7 or 8 different lorries turning up. That delivery service had better be on time, in full when I ask for it. And actually, if I'm running out, I want somebody to come and support me when I need more stock at a quick notice. Engineering was also quite an important part here, because if your pump breaks down in the middle of service, then you actually need somebody to get out there and fix it pretty quickly. And of course, it's got to be good value. So they were the kind of things that we looked at. And then we kind of answered, when we looked at all our competition, who could answer the needs fully based on everything that we found out? Heineken were a big competitor, Carlsberg were a big competitor, both big national brewers. Then we had dedicated wholesalers, and then we had regional brewers who also had a wholesaling offering. So the point of this is to really put the competitors against your offer and say, how can we win? Now actually, some of their services were better than ours, but no one could deliver the whole service, the whole suite. And then our whole challenge, I guess, was to be able to invest in the areas we weren't good enough to be able to offer the best overall service. And we were going to be a national wholesaler with the power of a brand owner was the focus. But our why became our customer's favourite wholesaler. So very, very simple. Put the customer at the heart of everything that we're doing. How do we become the customer's favourite wholesaler? And I would suggest if you can answer that why for your business, then in your words, in the right way, that's a really good start. So that's the first bit about market. Let's focus now on the company. So that was finding a way to win. The company part is actually deciding what you will do and won't do to win. You have to make some choices. David talked about this earlier as well. Actually, number one, which customers are you going to serve? Now, we'd all like to serve all of the customers that are available, wouldn't we? But that might not be effective. You might not have that reach. The offer that you have might not be right. And David talked about segmentation. We looked at the whole number of customers we could access, 140,000, and we decided that our infrastructure was only really right for the biggest customers out there, because we have big 25-ton lorries, and there's no point trying to get in the back streets, dropping off a case of wine if you've got a 25-ton lorry. So we looked at the 140,000 and said really there was a universe of about 30,000 in the UK we could really access. The business model. Your business model, is it for profit or not for profit? That's one of the questions that you need to answer. Actually, if you're not for profit, all it means is you're investing any returns back into providing more service. But everything else is exactly the same. But then how will you be different? Again, we talked about this last week. There's no point trying to deliver exactly the same thing as the competition. You know, the best way to win is to do something different on a different battleground to your competition. So is it the product is different? Is it the value? Is it the quality? Or is it that customer experience? And then business scope, and we'll go into this in a little bit more detail. What will you do in your business? Which activities are you going to do? And what will you get other people to do for you? So let's get to the next slide. So this is a very simple model of a business. We have suppliers at this end. We then have the core part of the business, so we buy stuff from the suppliers in order to make it. Then we sell it to customers or retail, who then sell it to consumers. And David talked about business to business or business to consumer. Yep, so that's one of the areas. But of course, in order to do that, we need to plan that production carefully, and we need to market and innovate to keep it relevant. And of course, we need to lead as well. We need to decide what is it that we're really trying to deliver. And we've got some very vital support functions at the bottom. They are IT, HR, finance, legal. So, 3 big questions about your business scope that you need to answer. First question is, do you make it or do you buy it? Okay, that's the first big question. So, I was actually chatting to some of you last week, and they were saying, well, I make it all. And we were just discussing, well, would it be a better use of your time if you got somebody to do a little bit of that making for you, and you can spend more of your time doing something else? Because that's where you add value. So make or buy. Do you sell direct or do you sell through? That's the second question. So do you want to sell it direct to the consumer, or are you going to sell it through a customer? And then lastly, do you want to insource all of your support, or are you going to outsource some of that? And as you scale up, these questions are going to become really, really important to you. It might be that right now you're a one-man function and you're doing all of this. You're doing absolutely everything. As you start to get more sales, then you need to decide how you move from doing it all to either hiring people, I'm going to talk about that in a second, or getting somebody else to do it for you, a third party to buy it for you, to give you the time to be able to focus on what is going to make a difference for you. Yeah. So part of your scale-up plan has to start to think about which of these functions I'm going to deliver myself, and I'm going to hire people in to help me do it, or I'm going to actually get another company to do it for me because it's just more efficient to do it in that way. Okay. So that's business scope. So what did we decide? Going back to the example again. Well, already said we're going to focus on the high value customers. So 30,000 of those 140,000 were the ones we were focused on. Actually, we only delivered half of all of their drinks to our customers that we had already. So out of 100% of their drinks requirements, we only had 50% of that share. So fill the wagons. We had these big 25-ton wagons, big fixed cost. If we could get another 10%, it really delivered a significant amount of cash, because you've got a fixed cost turning up at the pub anyway, another 10%, it's free money. And then lastly, actually, how are we going to be different is we're going to invest significantly in the service that we provide to the customer, in their business support, but also just doing what we said we would do and keeping to our promises. So that was the what, and actually it was as simple as that, our strategy. So, okay, people, creating a team who put the organisation first. This part actually is probably the hardest part about running a business, and also probably the most rewarding that it can be. So, before we get to that, let's get back to the phones. Now, if your phone has gone off, by the way, you just refresh. So, just click on refresh and the connection will come back up. So, how confident, if you had to go and hire some people now, how confident do you feel in managing people? Great. Okay. Shall we have a look then? We've got a clear winner there. Confident. Okay. Very confident. Unsure. Terrified. Okay. So you were certainly more confident than when I first started managing people. Anyway, I think I found this the hardest part of business when I first started managing people. I'm really pleased to see that you're really confident. Perhaps you're all superstars, and that's fantastic. For me, it was the hardest part to actually become, equipped, I guess, to manage people. Let's talk through that in a little bit more detail. So, really, it comes down to two things: getting the right people with the right behaviours, but also your leadership. If you're going to create a business and you're going to lead this business, then your leadership is the other side of the coin. So we'll start on right people with the right behaviours. Now, actually, it should be very, very easy. Okay, all you need to do is tell people what you want, allow them to get on with it, support them if they really need it. Reward and recognise them when they've done well, and actually take action when they're not doing well. The problem is that's actually very infrequently managers do all of those 5 things. So sometimes you don't actually set expectations, you don't actually tell people what you want, and therefore they'll go and do things that you think that you want, and then are surprised when you're disappointed. Or you get in there and try and do it for them. So you hire some people and you find yourself, it's easy if I do it myself, and you get in and do that. Or not providing the right support, so they're struggling with something and you don't support them. And probably the one where I've always found the hardest to do is to say thank you when somebody's done something really, really well, because it's almost I've got a high bar, and I always forget that everyone needs to have that recognition, and that's vital. But the one that people are most challenged with is having that difficult conversation when somebody isn't performing, and it's a really tricky conversation to have. And why is that? It's because we are all human, and nobody wants to tell somebody bad news. And it's understandable, absolutely understandable. But here's the challenge: the worst behaviour that you are willing to tolerate will set the whole tone for your business. Okay? It's not going to be the best behaviour within your business. It'll be the worst behaviour that you tolerate. Everyone will look to that behaviour of that individual and say, well, it's okay to do that around here. So your whole focus actually is to take action. And this is where it is about you, and it is about your leadership. And I have, so let me tell you my journey on this. I got my first big job when I was purchasing director. So 40 people. I'd run teams before, so 8 to 10 people. But really, that was completely different to running a big office of 40 people. And I went in there, and first off, I actually didn't know anything about purchasing. Absolutely nothing. I was a salesman beforehand. Came to do purchasing. So, of course, I had to learn all about purchasing. My whole focus was, I've got to show the team that I'm good enough. I've got to show the team I'm good enough. So I focused on doing purchasing better than anyone else. But that wasn't my job. That was their job to do the purchasing. My job was to be the leader. 6 months in, Christmas party, one of my team took me aside and gave me it. He gave me the feedback. He was a little bit drunk. And he said, Steve, you're failing. You're a rubbish leader. We're failing because you're failing. And it was really hard feedback. So I kind of woke up in the morning thinking, should I sack him should I sack me or do I change? And actually, I was very, very fortunate that I had some excellent support from the team at Molson Coors, that they helped me through this. They helped me through this journey. But it's not overnight. It took 12 months to even get anywhere close. Because first of all, I took this feedback on board, and then I went from trying to tell everyone what to do and prove that I could do it better, to I want everyone to be, I want to be liked. I want everyone to be great. I want to be the best coach in the world. And I moved from telling to coaching pretty much overnight. And my whole focus was on making sure everyone could be better. And I'm going to come back onto that in a second. But the 12 months helped me understand this. And actually, if you're managing people, then at the very, very heart, it's about understanding yourself first. So for me, it was about connecting with what I found to be really, really important, my values, what I believed to be true, but also recognizing that when I wasn't being great, it's because I was leading out of fear. I'm not good enough, I'll get it wrong. If I show any emotion, people think I'm weak. I have to do it because I haven't got time for other people to wait and other people to do it in the right way. All of this came from a fear of me actually not being good enough. But understanding that and being able to recognize it, to be able to then to go and then work with, the emotion actually of managing people, it took 12 to 18 months. And I'm not gonna be able to, give you any great insights on this within 5 minutes on one slide. But the reason I share it is because actually there will be some times, if you are successful, that when you're as a leader, it's going to be really, really tough. Okay? I would say look in the mirror first and try and work through that for yourself before you put it on other people. So, being able to look in the mirror and seeing what you're driving rather than what you think other people are doing first. But I am going to give you 5 quick tips, okay? So these might help. Okay, first principle is protect the majority. So, when I wanted everyone to be great, and I wanted to be the best coach I could possibly be, and I went out and, our one-to-ones were about, I'm going to make sure you can be the best at your job that you can be. The challenge with that is that I was serving the individual. Yeah, I was serving the individual. The challenge is, not everyone is right for the business. There could be the right person in the wrong job, or they might actually just not be right for the business. That doesn't make them a bad person. It's just actually, they're probably going to go and do something better somewhere else. But for the culture that we were trying to create, they weren't right. When you serve the individual, you don't serve the team, and you'll tolerate the performance. And when you're not serving the team, or when you put your team first above other people's teams, you're not serving the organisation. Your job as a leader of an organisation, as a founder of an organisation, is to protect the majority. And I would include yourself in that individual. Put yourself last. Organisation first, team second, and then individual last. It's helped me, that change of mindset has helped me take some really, really tough decisions. Whether that's making some people redundant, sacking people, closing factories, all of it, if you put the organisation first, then you're protecting the majority. You're giving more people a chance to be successful than if you tolerate something that will actually drag everyone down. So that's principle 1. Principle 2 is that we have a traitor in our skull, and David talked about cognitive bias. Basically, all our brains are wired in a certain way. They're wired to make sense of the world and to make it simple. Okay, so when you're making something simple, you come up with a very clear belief. This is how the world is. I believe the world is like this. But what your brain does, it ignores any data which says that the world doesn't work in that way. I mean, I think a really good example is what's happening in America at the moment. So Donald Trump, 76% of what he says is untrue. Okay, it's untrue. But his supporters, when they are faced with that, ignore it. So even faced with facts, even faced with absolute facts that it's untrue, then actually it's not irrelevant, because they've got such a strong belief about what he's saying. The simplest beliefs, are the hardest to move. So recognizing that everything in your head can be false, then it's a really good start rather than pushing someone else's viewpoint aside, dismissing somebody's idea. Actually start with the fact that actually everything in your brain is false, and at least you can then start to check it out and say, is that really true? Is that really true? And if you ask yourself that enough times, you can actually work through the logic of it and the reasoning of it much better. So the brain, unfortunately, is an amazing tool, but it drives us sometimes to completely wrong conclusions. And so let's see how this plays out in principle 3. So John and Jodie, let's say. Jodie's got a big presentation to make. Yeah? All of the bosses are in the room. She's been working on this for weeks, and she's really nervous. She stands up and starts presenting. Halfway through the presentation, John sticks up his hand and says, Jodie, I don't agree with this. Okay, what's Jodie thinking? He's out to look good in front of the boss. He's out to make me look bad. Maybe actually maybe he's got a point. I don't know what I'm talking about, and this is wrong. I'm going to get found out. This idea is not as good as I thought. All of those kind of things start going in mind. Why? Because actually, Jodie doesn't know John's intentions of that. So actually, maybe he just doesn't understand. Maybe he just doesn't understand. But straight away, because of those unknown intentions, she knows how it makes her feel, by the way. She's very clear about how it makes her feel. Normally either fight or flight. I'm going to attack John now, because that's the only way I can get by, or I'm just going to try and get out of this room as quickly as possible and finish the presentation. If you presume good intentions from the person, you can stop, or you can certainly have a choice about how to react. Because if you presume bad intentions, negative intentions, then you're going to react in a certain way, aren't you? You're going to react aggressively, or you're going to react defensively. So if you presume that person has good intentions, then at least you've got a chance to check it out. It might be that they have got bad intentions, but at least you've got a chance to check it out. If you don't check it out, then you're only going to react, and it's going to end up in a spiral, going down and down and down. So, principle number 3, presume positive intention. Principle number 4, trust your heart. Okay, so I can't remember, a philosopher once said that actually the best judgments, best decisions are cold, hard reasoning, devoid of emotion. Okay? Actually, that's scientifically proved to be false now. So the study of people with brain damage, there was a chap called Phineas Gage who had an iron rod shot up through his chin, out the top of his head, and it left his frontal cortex completely fine. His reasoning was perfect, but it went through the part of the brain that controls emotion. He was a star before that happened. Afterwards, his reasoning was still the same, but he couldn't make good decisions, couldn't make good life decisions. And what has been found with all of these kind of studies around brain injury is that what's really, really key is being able to link reasoning with heart. with emotion. And what I found, that if it doesn't feel right, then it probably isn't right. You can always rationalize in your course of action that, we'll make more money, the customer really believes this. You can always rationalize it. But if it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right. And the best decisions are when you've got an element of both. Reasoning with a bit of gut. And lastly, agree the beliefs. So everyone has their own personal values. And actually, if we all had time and we could get into what each of your values are, they will all be different. And they will all be in your words. Values are what's important to us as individuals. Beliefs are what we believe to be true. And beliefs drive behaviour. So values drive beliefs, beliefs drive behaviours. So if you want to align an organisation behind something, if you want to get a team of people aligned behind something, don't worry about values, focus on the beliefs. Okay, because if you can get everybody agreeing on the beliefs, that will drive behaviours. And it doesn't matter that we all have slightly different values. So this is what we did actually. We decided to have this big transformation of the wholesaling division I talked about, and I got everyone in a room. Everyone. The top 50. So everyone who was leading a big team. And we worked through all night on what it is that we believed. And we turned those beliefs into principles. So a belief might be, I believe we should listen to the customer more. Okay? And then we came up with these principles of how we wanted to work. So we want to have honest, engaging, simple. So we talk about pub speak, plain English, no management bollocks, basically. Two-way communication. So us to the customer, us to our employees back, the customer back. Very, very important for us. And it was honest. So, let's not try and gild the lily. Let's just say it as it is. And that is the same for somebody's performance as it is for, actually, we have to take this tough decision and we're going to have to make these changes because this is what we need to do to be successful. The next principle was right people, right roles. What that actually meant was that some people weren't the right people and some of the right people weren't in the right roles. And I would say there were, I think 20% of my team, my direct team went, and then 25% of the team below, and then probably about 10% of the people on the ground, as we brought the right people into the organisation. Fair reward for great performance. So really easy to say. Everyone was on different pay. So what do we want to do? We want to be as transparent as possible. The market rate is this. Let's say it's £30,000. You're on below the market rate. Your performance is above target, so you should get the biggest pay rise. Yeah, that sounds great, doesn't it? Really positive. What happens if you're getting paid £35,000 and you're on target? You're delivering an on-target performance. I'm really sorry, we're already paying you for your performance. You're not getting a pay rise. But that's fair because I could use the money that we saved from that to give it to the people who are performing better. Personal accountability for sustainable results. One of the biggest challenges, I think, in any organisation is the boom and bust. So we're diving for the line. We're going to hit our profit. We're going to pay out these bonuses, and you get boom and bust year after year. So you tip for the line. You try and deliver everything. You probably put some. You open some customers that you really don't think will last. The customer goes bust next year, and suddenly you're left with a huge amount of debt. So we took that out. We aligned the incentives to ensure that people were driving sustainable long-term results. Okay, how are we doing for time? Just about over. So last bit, organisation. So creating an environment that lets your team fly. So what we talk about when we talk about organisation, three things really. Infrastructure, which is, well, really how you do things around here. So it's policies, it's processes, it's the organisation structure, it's how you organise the team, it's meetings, it's metrics, it's all of that stuff, which means how you work around here. It's the priorities that you put on business, and lastly, the resource you put to those priorities. And that's how you organise. You agree all of the policies, processes, procedures, all of that kind of stuff. You set some clear priorities and you make sure you resource them. So, we're going to go back to the phones. So, there are two theories. A guy called Douglas McGregor came up with this in the 60s, and he basically said, the average worker has little ambition, dislikes work, avoids responsibility, and therefore you have to give them close supervision. Theory Y is, average worker, they can be self-directed, desires responsibility, likes to work, so you don't have to give them as much supervision. So if we went back to the phones and say which theory describes your outlook, okay, well, I think we've got a clear result there. Theory Y, okay, and theory X. Now, the key here actually is that there is no wrong or right answer. Again, it all depends on what kind of culture you want to create. Yeah, it all depends on what kind of culture you want to create, because the whole organisation actually stems from your outlook on this. So do you want to have a very controlling organisation because you believe this, or do you want to have less controlling and you want to empower and delegate responsibility through theory Y? If you want to have a place of work where people want to work there and like working there, it's probably going to be more theory Y. But success is not guaranteed on this. I've worked for bosses who are theory X and who have pushed a very controlling kind of atmosphere down, and also people who are very theory Y. The interesting thing for me is, though, that even if you believe this, and I use Molson Coors as an example, the structures that they put in place really came from theory X. A company that was so focused on people you will not get. Molson Coors was a really, really people-oriented organisation. But some of the structures that they put in came from theory X. Why? American companies, Sarbanes-Oxley, all of those kind of things. It forces you down a control culture. The question that I've got for you is that actually, does this have to be the case? So when you're founding your business and you start to create the organisation, do you really need to do this? So policy. I mean, we used to have all kinds of policies, everything from bullying and harassment, insider trading, gifts and entertainment, travel and expenses. Now, of course, all of those are important. They tell you what you shouldn't do. And actually, I would say they're important policies to have. But most people will know that bribing officials is not the right way of going about business. So keep what you shouldn't do very tight, very clear, very short. Yeah? Why can't those policies be about more positive things about what we should be doing? And actually, most policies talk about what you shouldn't do. So maybe a policy around, actually, we should treat every single customer in the same way. Each customer should have the same ability to get the same price that we offer. That could be a policy, and that then guides a positive behaviour within the organisation. Or a policy is, we will be transparent on everyone's market salary and where they are against that market salary to help them make the right career decisions. Again, it's a positive policy. Processes. the reality of some processes are that they drive exactly the opposite intent of what they were designed to do. So travel and expense is probably my favourite. So I used to have to sign off, as an MD, people's pre-authorise their train journey. Everyone. Okay. So of course, I got loads of them coming through all the time. Did that mean that I was paying good attention of whether they should be using the train or driving? Absolutely not. I approved every single one of them. Because you haven't got time to do that. So the intent is we're going to stop people using the train and we're going to get this approval. The reality is everyone knows that no one's got time to not approve them because you're working 12 hours in a day, therefore off it goes. Performance management is a process. So employees sit down and say, this is what I did this year, these are my objectives, let's have a talk about my development and succession plan. The process that you put around that, the intent is a very, very good, honest conversation between a line manager and a colleague. The reality is both people hate it. Because it's a big form, you've got to fill it in, it takes a lot of preparation. Why not replace that with just real honest conversations? So, I mean, what I would do now is I would be guided by 3 questions. Would I be devastated if this person left tomorrow? If I am, they're a star, and I'm going to have to focus all my effort on these guys. Would I be happy to rehire them if I had a vacancy tomorrow? If I would, they're a good contributor, and I've got to make sure that they're comfortable in what they work. Or would I be happy if they handed in their notice tomorrow? And if that, they're underperforming, and I've got to take action. Now, if you just make sure that you're honest with people about where they sit against that, you can have a good conversation. Is that really true or not? It might be, my view might be different, so might be wrong, but we can talk it through. But at least we're not getting tied up in the bureaucracy of a big form. We're getting to the honest conversation really, really quickly. And then organisation structures. Well, actually, this is how you organise your teams, all of that kind of stuff. The key thing is to make sure you've got the right people in the room around the right task. So think task first. Which tasks are you working on? Okay, so you've kind of put that organisation around the business. This is absolutely key because this is where the rubber hits the road. You've got a great idea of how to win. You've decided what you will and won't do in your company, and you're going to get some other people to do parts of it. You've recruited the right team, you put the right organisation. But if you don't make a choice, because your time is limited, your cash is limited, your capability is actually limited. If you're not making a choice about where you're going to absolutely focus that resource, then you're not making a choice at all. And your execution will fall down. And this is probably the last 50 yards where great ideas fall down because people don't invest enough behind the great idea because they're investing in lots of other ideas which aren't really that great. So it's all about making that choice and doubling down on the things that will make the real difference. This is a useful kind of structure if you want to think about the balanced, almost a balanced way of thinking about what the important things are to do. So you want to come up with a small number of really important things. What is it about customers that you want to do? What is it about your people? What is it about your operations? So, the way of doing business. What is it about community and environment? And what is it about your finances? Now, actually, if you think about that, you're going to get a balanced view of the kind of internal importance, operations and finances. Your external, so your community reputation, but also your customers, and actually how your people feel within the organisation. So, using that framework, we didn't use that at the time, but I've gone back and put the kind of key things that we did against those. So what did we do? It was a huge change program, actually. We doubled the number of products that we sold. We said to our customer, the more that you buy, the cheaper it gets. You know, that's fair enough, fair pricing. We introduced a more flexible distribution service. We picked the right team. I've talked about the hard decisions we had to make to get the right people in. We then invested in those people around their leadership, and we invested in the people who are out on the road to deliver a better service, to be able to support the business more. Huge restructure, actually. We put more managers, more leaders into the business, because part of organisation, if you've got 14 direct reports, you are not going to be able to support them in the way that you'd want to. So maximum of 8 reports we had. We brought telesales, engineering, and people out on the road together into one team around the customer. Before that, they were all very separate. In fact, the salesman out on the road couldn't talk to the engineer directly. He wasn't allowed to before. But we changed all that and brought them into a team. We renegotiated the distribution contract, huge contract. And then we changed the incentive scheme to stop the kind of boom to bust. And one of the big areas was we had a lot of working capital. So we actually loaned money to our customers to invest in their premises. 60 million pounds worth of. So we were a bank. We had bad debts, which we had to get down, and we had stock, and we had a lot of engineering capital out in our customers. So a real focus on that drives return. So lastly, through that, we said we'd measure our results by improving our customer satisfaction. It was about 85% to 90%. Getting world-class employment engagement, so employee engagement, and doubling our profitability. That's what we said we'd do. Do you want to see what we did? So this is where we were in 2007. This is our engagement score. So the team score is in the blue. High-performing companies. So UK's high-performing companies were actually, I think they were global high-performing companies were in the black dots. And then you've seen the slide about how we were performing and how we were forecast performing. So that was 2008 engagement. So service-wise, actually we just missed. We just missed the 90%. We were just off it, but we did get a lot of awards from the industry for the change that we'd made. So we were highly commended as one of the best Great British pub suppliers. Our engagement shot up, actually. We went from 77% to 90% on engagement. Towers Perrin, the people who did this, have said that they've never seen in 1 year the level of engagement improvement. And we beat the high-performing companies hands down in almost every category. And then profit. Look at that hockey stick. Yeah. So we did actually, by 2010, which was the goal, we doubled our profitability. So we got back to where we were kind of 4 years previously. So hopefully, from this, that you can see that if you use this model, find a way to win, really understand what you will do and won't do in the company, get the right team who really want to put the organisation first, and then organise that team in the right way, and then fill in those simple questions. Why? What's the purpose of my business? What am I going to do to make a difference? How am I going to work? And then lastly, how do I know if I'm going to be successful? I think that's me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. I think the one thing just to think about for a lot of you guys is Steve's experiences with large companies, but it's about the thinking. It's about how you approach it at this stage. Some of you are employing, a lot of you are not, but if you start to think this way, if you start to think about the principles that Steve's laying out now, and the same with a lot of the information David's already given you, your path should be clearer. You should be preempting some of these issues, and you start off on a more solid foundation. I think most of the things in here, Steve said he's made these mistakes, I'm sure David has, I know I have, but it's trying to think about these things now, so you're laying those best foundations for success. So, questions?
The question is related to your leadership skills that you have pointed out, that managing your emotions and managing. But when you don't have actually a team which is hierarchical, like, and it's a startup company where it's, you know, it's all are same, they're partners.
Yeah.
So how do you manage your emotions and time, and how important is that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's still incredibly important actually, because managing your emotions is important for managing other people, but it's just as important for managing your energy and your motivation to do the job. So when you are faced with setbacks or challenges or issues, how you react to that internally will be in the same way. You'll be telling yourself, you know, I'm not good enough, you know, this is not right, I've done this wrong, all of those kind of things. Now, if you can stop and just take take a breath, and then actually just write down what it is that you're feeling and why you're feeling, and then check out whether it's really true or not. You know, are you right to give yourself such a hard time and have these emotions? Then that process, I think, will help you, and it's just as important for managing yourself as it is for managing other people.
I think one other thing on that one, if you could elaborate on that, is I think the other thing is when you're an entrepreneur, when you're the owner, when it is yourself on the line.
Yeah.
How do you think you manage that? I think again, I've fallen down the line where you take things very personally because it is it's your money on the line, it's your idea on the line, it's your life on the line.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering what sort of tips you would give a lot of these guys who are just about to enter that situation.
But I think when you're under pressure, and the more pressure you're under, the more you lead from fear, actually, and the more you're driven by your fears. So, I'm going to fail, you know, this is not good enough. All of those kind of things come out. So it's I think it's exactly the same, but you might be under more pressure because it's you know. If I made a mistake at Molson Coors and I got fired, well, I could always go and get a job somewhere else. But if you put your house on the line, or you put a lot of money on, or it's your business, then there's more pressure. So I think the reality of fear driving you is probably even more. So again, I would say when you lead from fear, the reaction that you drive is probably not going to be the most optimal one for you. And the only way you can overcome that, actually, is to have proper self-reflection about, you know, is it really true? Why am I leading from this? Now, you can do that yourself, but actually it might be an opportunity to get somebody who you either trust or you love, or actually get an experienced coach to come and support you through that. Because sometimes it needs people to ask the hard questions, the challenging questions of you. That's what helped me anyway, to be able to answer really truthfully.
I suppose that's where a good board or non-exec comes in, and I think it's the other thing, having, as David mentioned earlier as well, a critical friend, someone that will be honest with you.
Definitely.
Because what you don't want is people telling you what you want to hear. That is disastrous. Any more questions? One more, come along, somebody. Yes?
You talk quite a lot about Molson Coors, but I guess your recent times being with Two Sisters, which is a lot more entrepreneurial company. What's the biggest way you've had to flex your style?
Yeah, I mean, actually going from a blue chip to an entrepreneur was a complete different style. So when you're in a blue chip, you presume what's in the best interest of the shareholder. It's a very comfortable place to be, actually, because you're always right. Your presumption of what he wants is always right. Yeah. When you go and work in an entrepreneurial environment and you have the owner sitting opposite you saying in no uncertain terms what he wants, and because my first reaction was, no, I'm not sure that's in your best interests. it takes a completely different mindset actually. So one from, I think, where you are actually setting the agenda to where you're serving the entrepreneur, and the mindset switch that I had to have was moving from almost deciding what was required to serving the entrepreneur, and that's a very big leap when you've had 18 years in a blue chip, but incredibly important learning for me actually to be able to have that different experience.
Anyone else? Jordana.
Okay, so you mentioned about like scale plan, like how you move from doing everything by yourself to hire people, to train people to do stuff for you, like making the product and you deal with customers. How did you move from that to that? Because as a startup, you have that limited cash and time.
Yeah.
How do you move from that?
And that's that is the big challenge, isn't it? You've got an idea, you're doing everything, you're getting some good early results, let's say, and you've got a level of sale, but you're flat out. You're 100% flat out working on the business, and it's difficult to make that jump, isn't it, from one to the next? And because that jump normally takes a bit of it's more people, more cash, more time, and it's finding a way of getting that. Now, there are different avenues available to deliver that, and I'm sure somebody like David will be able to give his view. What you are trading off is your control for someone else's involvement if you're taking cash, or less control but more interest payments in terms of bank, or the other options, I guess, around crowdfunding and all those kinds. But finding a way and the right time to scale up, I think, is key, and then doing it in a way that you're comfortable, that you can retain the level of control that you want and get the return that you want, rather than paying, putting all the effort in and seeing someone else get the rewards. I can't tell you exactly how to do it. I think it's timing and finding the right source.
Any other questions? I realise this has been quite an intense session today. Any other questions? Great, okay. So, firstly, we'll thank Steve in a second, but just to remind you, tomorrow morning we kick off at 9:30 with BDO, and that's all about accounts and finance. That's an Entrepreneurship 101. Then after that, we have Potter Clarkson coming in about patents. So, an intense day. But thank you very much to Steve, and thank you very much to Bill.